Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I want to talk about the psychology of people who stay home alone in solitude and why they enjoy this. The research is going to be in the description box, and we're going to talk about the research as well. Regarding all of those details, what the research suggests, what it could mean psychologically, if it can be healthy, if it cannot be healthy, but everything is specific to that particular case. But I'd still like to talk about it to help individuals kind of reflect and understand what's going on. The first one I feel like is the most obvious. They genuinely prefer solitude, not necessarily tolerating it, but prefer it. They seek it out. There could be many reasons why, but we cannot remove the fact that there is a preference that some people have for solitude. In fact, this research is very fundamental. 1995, it shows that some people actually are stable individuals that have a preference for being alone. It is not because they are unstable. It does not necessarily mean that there is a struggle with socialization or emotional regulation. They just simply prefer being alone. And I think we need to understand that not all the times it's some deep particular reason. It could just merely be they like being alone. And a lot of people, this can be inwardly rewarding. It doesn't necessarily mean something's missing. They just simply experience happiness in a state of solitude. Okay. If you guys are looking for more exclusive content about lots of different types of aspects of psychology, as well as like-minded individuals, I actually have a group, and a lot of us are pretty familiar with psychology, and we really like to share a lot of stuff. And I feel like it can be helpful to a lot of individuals who want that. It builds social relationships, but we're able to talk about a little bit more specific topics than we are on YouTube. And I think a lot of you guys will like it. So that's pinned in the comments for anyone who wants to join. We would love to have you. The next one is that they grew up in an unpredictable home, which can actually develop, it affects their developmental system regarding stress. It can resolve through therapy, through a lot of different regulation skills. But normally what we see is that this can actually happen. And this research in 2024 does show that childhood adversity, a lot of people know this, can come from unpredictable childhoods, right? And so this typically means a chaotic home. And this home can be parents fighting unpredictably. One parent is in and out, or both parents. Sometimes you might change caregivers a lot. Sudden changes in mood, parents having this. Substance misuse, we talk about this a lot, right? Inconsistent rules. A lot of people forget this one, but it's very important. If your parents in the household have inconsistent rule sets, or your parents have inconsistent preferences depending on their mood, this is confusing. Sometimes what we see is different rules per child. That's also incredibly confusing. Frequent movements that are very dramatic. I've had patients where they mention there was the movements, my parents had very harsh movements. Sometimes they would use their body language to intimidate me. They wouldn't hit me. This is an example, right? But they might say the parent did not physically do anything, but they would almost look like they're about to. And so these children turned into adults don't like that harsh movement. Financial instability, unpredictable, communication strategies. One moment the parent is yelling, sometimes they're not. And then this one is almost all the time, but it's okay, not all the time, but it's very common. Calm periods followed by explosions. Okay. Not knowing what version of the parent that you feel you're going to encounter. Okay. And so this research shows that the one in 2024 that I mentioned, the cognitive, emotional, behavioral, social, and biological development is affected. Again, it can be reversed, but that means the child will have a lot of stress inwardly. And sometimes what happens is they're so used to life being unpredictable, sometimes they just avoid it. When they're by themselves, there's only a couple variables they have to think about. If they leave the house very often, there will be multiple variables, and subconsciously in their mind, they believe more variables, more pain, more stress, more trauma. And so that can be why, okay? Another research was a meta-analysis. I'm just pulling up my notes here. I believe this one is new. I like this one too. 2026. What we see is that individuals who grew up in a home where there's much going on, just as we characterized from the research in 2024, we see that sometimes the only option they had was to detach. Their home was so chaotic, they didn't get the self-soothing mechanisms to watch TV, to hug their parents, to talk it out. They didn't have any of those options. And so they literally only learned this skill. Not only learn this skill, but it's their best skill because maybe there was truly their own choice. This meta-analysis examined 102 papers, okay? 107 samples, 274 independent effect sizes. And what we saw is basically the reason why it was done that way is to see different aspects of emotional regulation. And it's really important that we realize children who have emotional abuse in their childhood or neglect actually had greater use of avoidant, like they avoided their emotional, how do I even put it like this? They avoided expressing their emotions, they avoided connecting with people, and used more detachment strategies to regulate themselves. It was a very high prediction. I think it was like I wish I wrote the percentage down. I'm trying to remember it off the memory, but I don't like using things off the memory without looking at the notes I took because then it's inaccurate. But I remember the percentage was very high of children who were abused or neglected. I think it was like, I won't even say, but it was very high. I just wish I wrote it down. The next one is some people just have a higher capacity for self-directed activities. So research does show, this research was 2014 and 2025, that people who enjoy solitude they're not necessarily avoiding anything. They just prefer a certain type of stimulation structure. And so they sometimes prefer more self-directed. Sometimes they just prefer controlled types of environments. And so creative work like painting, usually by themselves, video gaming, actually, a lot of people don't think about it like this, but it's a very self-directed, very controlled environment. You get to play the game you want, the way you want to, and it's controlled. I'm not saying these people have control issues. I'm just saying a lot of people have a preference where sometimes they have a busy job and they just rather do something where there's not many variables all the time. Reading is a good one. Exercising, cooking. I love cooking. You guys know this, so I can relate to that one, right? Music, sometimes listening to music, writing music, creativity, things of that sort. Organizing. I love organizing. I know that's kind of strange. I love organizing. That's a good one. Watching movies. Some people really like the option of picking the specific movie they want for their specific mood. I have a lot of patients that like this. Do it. That's a self-directed activity. It makes you happy. And this was 2 research, right? 2014, 2025. And the next one is just some people prefer this emotional regulation as solitude. It doesn't always mean there's trauma. It doesn't always mean that you grew up with a chaotic home. Sometimes it does, but sometimes you just like to manage all of the things going on in your life. It can be sometimes much more simpler if you just streamline things by just using solitude as a form of emotional regulation. 2008, which means often if you have a really difficult day, sometimes you need more solitude. Some people don't feel this way, but a lot of people do. I'm this way, right? Some of us are. And then some people where it's a little bit more traumatized, they might need this in a more higher level, and that's okay. Everybody's different. Whereas maybe they had a very difficult conversation with their boss. Now they need the rest of the day to just relax and be themselves. That's okay. Some people need different timeline limits for this, and that's something to keep in mind as well. The next one is they may have a particularly strong need for autonomy, right? A lot of us can relate to this, and we can see autonomy is actually freely choosing your own behavior. This is very similar to, playing games, watching the movies you want. Often when you're alone, you control the entire environment, but especially this one particularly inside your own home, right? Self-directed activities you could do outside of the home, but this particular video, we're talking about those that you can do inside the home, and this is particularly why. And so the research in the description box, I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.